Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are cracking open a collection of sources that explores something really fundamental to how society functions.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about how we categorize each other based on these basic foundational social categories.
Yeah.
Specifically, we're doing a deep dive into the complex web of prejudice and discrimination tied to three big ones: age, ability, and appearance.
That's right. Our mission today is to, extract the core insights on how these specific, deeply ingrained biases, ageism, ableism, and lookism actually function psychologically.
Okay.
We really need to go beyond just the definitions and focus on how societal stereotypes manifest in, well, real-world consequences.
Things like employment discrimination.
Exactly. From employment discrimination to the very specific language people use when they talk to one another.
And for you, the learner diving in with us, your mission is to walk away not just with clear definitions, but with a few surprising pieces of research about how these biases work.
And where the why comes from.
Exactly, and a detailed understanding of the most acute areas where discrimination based on age causes real harm. So let's unpack this, starting with the dynamics of age.
Ageism is our starting point. It's defined pretty simply as evaluative judgments made about someone based solely on their advanced age.
Right.
But what our sources immediately point out is the essential nuance here. Well, yes, physical processes may slow down. The research highlights that middle and old age bring significant advantages.
Advantages like what?
Things like people being more comfortable being themselves and having a stronger sense of purpose.
I find that reframing of aging so powerful. It asks us to view it not as just a narrative of decline, but as a dynamic process. So it means recognizing the accumulated experiences and insights and actively working to create robust intergenerational community. But how do researchers actually measure that stronger sense of purpose? That sounds like a powerful counterpoint.
Well, they often look at factors like goal setting, satisfaction with past achievements, and the feeling of contributing value to society.
Yeah.
It's an internal metric that often stabilizes or even increases as people exit the high-stress, identity-searching phases of early adulthood. The point is, the subjective experience of aging is often much more positive than the societal stereotype.
So to understand how researchers approach the societal side, they break old age into specific research segments.
They do?
We have young, 20 to 35, middle age, 35 to 60, young old, 60 to 75, old, 75 to 85, and the oldest old, 85 plus.
Right.
Wait, 60 is considered young old in this research framework? That really shifts the entire traditional mental timeline?
It does, and it reflects that research confirms older adults commonly feel younger than their actual chronological age.
But society, unfortunately, defaults to the stereotype.
It does, and when we map older adults onto the stereotype content model, they land in the space of the weak but wonderful paradox. They're seen as high on warmth, kind and helpful, but critically low on competence.
That combination defines what's called benevolent ageism, right?
Yeah.
The belief that older adults are kind, but also inherently fragile and therefore in need of care or protective intervention.
Precisely. It's prejudice stemming from pity rather than pure contempt. And this plays directly into the forgetfulness stereotype.
Okay.
Everyone believes memory declines with age, and forgetting is seen as more worrisome for older adults. But the specific research insight is striking.
What do they find?
Younger people saw identical acts of forgetfulness as significantly more troublesome for a 70-year-old than for a 30-year-old.
But what about older people?
They saw a little difference in seriousness based on age.
So here's where it gets into the psychological mechanics. If older adults don't see a huge difference, whose anxiety is driving the public perception?
Well, the sources link this to terror management theory, or TMT. For younger people, the simple fact of aging, deterioration, and eventually death is a profound threat.
Right, mortality.
Yes. TMT suggests that to cope with this mortality salience, younger individuals distance themselves from the threat by stereotyping and shunning older adults.
Meanwhile, older adults experience a different fear.
A very different fear. It's often described as the fear of death of the self, the deterioration of physical appearance and abilities.
And since they can't distance themselves,
Their coping mechanism is internal. They promote a positive self-image, often by rejecting negative examples, thinking, that's not me, adjusting expectations and worrying less about conforming. It's like an internal shield.
and we know that older adults are definitely not a monolith. Researchers have categorized them into memorable subtypes. On the negative side, you might get the severely impaired, the recluse, or the shrew or curmudgeon, who's described as stubborn, complaining, and bitter.
And on the positive side, We see figures like the perfect grandparent wise and supportive, or the golden ager.
The golden ager, defined as active, independent, and determined.
Right, maintaining a very full social and physical schedule.
We also have to address the double standard of aging. The sources are absolutely clear that aging is seen as having earlier and more serious consequences for women than for men.
Yes, physical decline is judged much more harshly for women, who are consequently more likely to conceal signs of aging, particularly in public life.
That is true, and it reflects deeply embedded cultural values.
It does. However, there is a crucial nuance here. The double standard exists strongly in general evaluations and behavioral intentions, so how people feel and act toward older women. But the sources found no evidence of a double standard in competence ratings.
That is a striking finding. So, why would physical appearance be judged so harshly for women, but their actual competence ratings in the workplace remain equal?
It suggests that competence is evaluated through different lenses than appearance. Competence assessment might be driven more by, say, tangible performance or organizational rules.
Whereas appearance is driven by these ingrained social ideals.
Exactly, ideals that are notoriously strict for women. This distinction is critical because it isolates where the prejudice hits hardest, in social valuation and media visibility.
Let's talk about that visibility, because our sources highlighted 4 areas where age discrimination is acute. Number 1 is the media.
Right. Older adults appear pretty rarely, and when they do, they severely lack diversity. It's often a very restrictive profile. Young old, male, Caucasian, and able-bodied.
The second area is workplace discrimination.
Which has been called the most common type of economic discrimination against older people.
And this is rooted in these completely inaccurate beliefs.
Extremely inaccurate. That people over 55 can't meet physical demands, have high absenteeism, or that productivity declines. Decades of evidence fail to support any of those beliefs.
In fact, productivity often stays stable or even increases.
And through experience, yes.
The third area is healthcare, where the long-standing stereotype that illness is just normal and irreversible for older adults can lead to misdiagnosis or undertreatment.
Because symptoms get dismissed as just part of aging.
In the fourth area,
Language, where younger people often resort to patronizing speech. And that patronizing speech often escalates into elderspeak.
the extreme baby talk version of condescension.
Yes. Involving simplifying speech, using a demeaning tone, a higher voice pitch, short utterances.
And the research explains why elderspeak is so damaging, right? It's not just rude.
Not at all. Using simplified language and a patronizing tone actually reduces the cognitive processing ability of the recipient.
Potentially reinforcing the very dependent behavior the speaker is trying to manage.
Precisely. And finally, we have to talk about self-stereotyping. The tangible effects of internalizing ageist beliefs are measurable and, frankly, scary.
Stereotype threat affecting memory performance.
And leading to higher levels of loneliness, worse subjective health, and even shorter life expectancy. It becomes a self-fulfilling negative prophecy.
Conversely, endorsing positive stereotypes about aging, the golden ager, the wise mentor, can improve older adults' self-perceptions and behaviors.
Yes.
That is a powerful message of agency before we transition into our second area, ability and ableism.
Absolutely. Moving now into the domain of ability, we start with the definition of disability, which legally involves a physical or mental impairment that limits life activities. But sociologically,
It's understood as a social construct.
largely, yes.
That shift is key. So ableism is the prejudice created by social, political, and environmental obstacles
The sources call them handicaps, like inaccessible environments.
that turn inherent impairments into functional disabilities.
To illustrate this, the sources suggest shifting the focus from the person to the environment. Think about survey questions. Instead of asking, what complaint causes your difficulty in holding things?
Which focuses on the person's deficit.
Right. An environment-oriented question asks, what defects in the design of everyday equipment like jars causes you difficulty?
That reframes the entire issue. The problem is in the structural world, not the individual.
Exactly.
That makes perfect sense. And the extent of stigma faced by people with disabilities depends on several factors.
Yes, like whether the disability is concealable, aesthetically appealing, perceived as controllable, or perceived as potentially dangerous.
People without disabilities also experience specific anxiety types when interacting with people with disabilities.
They do. The first is aesthetic anxiety. That's the fear caused by an appearance deviating markedly from the norm. This often leads to awkward avoidance or outright shunning,
And the second is existential anxiety.
which is the perceived threat that a disability could interfere with a satisfied life. It's linked to the fear of losing one's own physical abilities, forcing the perceiver to confront their own vulnerability.
And we see communication errors here that are very similar to what we discussed in ageism.
Yes, people sometimes infantilize people with disabilities. It often stems from good intentions, but it's inevitably perceived as patronizing.
And that leads directly to the problem of overhelping.
Oh yes, rushing in to perform tasks that the person could manage themselves. And while it comes from a place of benevolent concern, this overhelping can lead to greater dependence and reduced self-confidence over time.
The sources offer clear guidelines, though.
They do. Speak directly to the person, not a companion or interpreter. Honor their language preferences. And critically, always ask permission before interacting with a service animal.
It's about respecting boundaries and autonomy. And on that note of language, it's important to understand the different approaches. You have people-first language
Like saying a person who is blind.
versus identity-first language, where a disabled person might claim that identity, saying, I am disabled.
Recognizing it as an important, non-negative part of who they are.
We also have to address mental illness stigma, which is particularly challenging.
It is. Attitudes toward mental illness are generally more negative than those toward physical disabilities.
Really? More negative?
Yes, the stereotypes are extremely harsh. Withdrawn, tense, unpredictable, dangerous, aggressive.
And this is where controllability becomes paramount again.
It really is. When mental illness is viewed as controllable, as a character flaw or something they could snap out of, perceivers are significantly more likely to avoid the person, withhold help, and endorse coercive treatment.
And the consequences are grim.
Stigma decreases the chance that people who desperately need help will seek treatment, and it leads to less optimism about their recovery.
But on the other side,
Destigmatization efforts like public openness have measurable positive effects. A greater sense of empowerment, better quality of life.
let's move to our final category, appearance bias, covering lookism and weight stigma.
Lookism. It's the positive stereotypes, prejudice, and preferential treatment accorded to physically attractive people whose appearance matches cultural values.
And the sources confirm that attractive people do enjoy tangible benefits.
Oh yes, more friends, better social skills, and significant economic advantages. Studies show they're more likely to be hired, get more promotions, and earn higher salaries.
Often up to 10 to 15% more.
That's right.
But it's essential to qualify this because the benefits are largely external.
Critical point. Attractiveness only has a marginal effect on overall well-being and long-term life satisfaction. It solves external problems, not internal ones.
We also see highly specific biases, like height bias.
Particularly for men, taller people benefit significantly. They're more likely to occupy positions of authority, earn more, get dates, and surprisingly, even be chosen as sperm donors over shorter candidates.
Now, for weight stigma, defined as the social devaluation and derogation of people due to excess body weight.
And this bias persists so intensely because, unlike some other biases we discussed, weight is not concealable and is, again, perceived as highly controllable.
The stereotypes are harsh and often morally loaded.
Lazy, sloppy, unattractive, unhappy, sad, powerless. This is explained precisely by the attribution value model.
Which is?
It proposes that prejudice is justified by the deeply held cultural assumption that excess weight is unhealthy, and critically, a choice that reflects poor character.
And that choice attribution is the lever, isn't it? The key supporting evidence is that if weight is described as uncontrollable, say, due to a thyroid condition, weight bias immediately decreases.
Exactly. When people believe it's a matter of willpower, they derogate.
The psychological cost of this is immense.
Immense. Weight bias is linked to depression, low self-esteem, eating disorders, and widespread employment discrimination. It creates a cycle of negative health and psychological outcomes.
So what does this all mean for solutions? Traditional approaches focus on personal weight loss.
They do, but the sources point toward weight-inclusive approaches, like health at every size.
Which shifts the focus.
Right. It's about improving healthcare access and decreasing structural stigma, rather than solely promoting weight loss as the single determinant of health.
That brings us to the end of our deep dive today. This was a fascinating and at times difficult exploration.
It was into the deep-seated categorization based on age, ability, and appearance.
Indeed. We saw how these categories dictate treatment, from the specific patronizing language we use, elderspeak and infantilization, to systemic economic discrimination.
In the workplace, in hiring, based on arbitrary factors like height and appearance.
The final key takeaway for you, listener, is remembering the counterpower of self-stereotyping.
Yes. We saw that endorsing positive views of one's own group leads to better self-perceptions and behaviors, whether you are managing the challenges of age, ability, or appearance.
And what connects the deep-seated prejudice around both mental illness and weight more than anything else is the role of perceived controllability. This raises an important question for you to mull over after this deep dive. Considering the vast range of human differences we covered today, how often is our compassion limited simply by the assumption that someone's current state is fully within their own control?